As we focus in on today and kind of what the current trends have been, HKA, of course, kind of staying on stage, playing back-to-back there. We just saw probably the best performance from 3Z individually, whereas Griffin are coming off of just a complete dismantling of Cloud9, talking about taking all of that power away from Licorice in particular, forcing him onto something like the Shin. So I'm curious if Griffin will use a similar blueprint in trying to take power out of the top side of the map, especially from red side with counter pick.
I mean, the blueprint lost them a single kill and no objectives. So I think that one's pretty sound on the side of Griffin. Speaking of Griffin on the red side here, we'll see if any of the interesting first picks are left open. Xayah early, very frequently seen and will be available.
So the Qiyana and Yuumi have both fallen through draft phase. Hong Kong Attitude have shown that they can play the Yuumi and go towards that.
Let's see if that's what they decide to do. The Xayah, once again, seems to be the priority pick here for Hong Kong Attitude. Griffin now do have both the Qiyana and the Yuumi that they could look for Frosk. Even things, I was going to say like the Akali, because I hadn't seen that had been banned out. That can't be picked because it's banned, but there is the Yuumi first up for Griffin.
And there was the bait. Now the thing about Qiyana for Griffin, and I kind of just want to float this as we go deeper into the tournament, is that Sword and Chovy typically like to play AD or do have a much deeper champion pool in terms of AD champions, which means AP junglers work really well for this team, which is why I also think that Tarzan as a phenomenal Taliyah player, but Taliyah is also very important as another AP jungler. So that's something to keep our eyes on as he locks in the Elise quite early on in the draft phase.
Their lane-dominating duo with Yuumi has been Lucian traditionally. We call it the bullet hell lane over in Korea because it does remind you of video games of yore. They are hovering over and they're actually going to just go to the Garen. They could have had the Ezreal, could have had the Lucian.
Could have had some fun.
No fun allowed. Fun police here are Griffin.
The last time we saw them play Garen Yuumi was against C9, and that was a very elongated game as well until Cloud9.
I just want to forget about that game.
Yeah. We'll see what Griffin decides to do with Garen Yuumi in the bottom lane. I expect they'll decide to do not too much and just constantly poke this Rakan and Xayah whenever they can.
It usually does herald a top-side focus from the jungler because Garen Yuumi, after the first few levels, are pretty impervious to damage. So we'll see if we'll see some spicy top-side picks as a reward. Qiyana falling very deep into the pick ban phase so far. Priority has gone down, but will be banned here by Hong Kong Attitude.
We are starting to see a little bit of a split. Qiyana also didn't have priority in FPX's game, so it feels like a lot of these Eastern teams aren't valuing Qiyana to the same degree that the Western teams are. And as we continue to go further into the tournament, that could be a break point as we enter knockout stage.
Definitely could. With the Kayle and LeBlanc banned away here by Griffin, Ezreal will be the final lock away. We have seen Chovy play that mid already this tournament, but I'm looking at things like the Ryze that are still up, the Aatrox still available as well.
Jace also has been Sword's go-to in a lot of games, so I think they just drop that here. Get Chovy an advantageous matchup. You can also play the mid lane Jace if needed.
And that's what you needed. You needed a strong AD pick to pair with your AP jungler, and Griffin have an abundancy of that. And it also works very well with a lot of their poke that Yuumi's also going to be putting out in the mid and later stages of the game.
Hong Kong Attitude still need to pick both their solo laners here. They know that one will probably be going into the Jace. Gangplank, very safe, can farm up pretty well, but I want to see what else they have.
I mean, you say that Gangplank is safe, but again, in the Eastern regions, Gangplank can get just blasted if you have the dive potential on him, which is something that Elise does very well. So depending on if that is the Jace versus Gangplank matchup, and if Sword does get an advantage and you build up a big crash, Griffin have all of the tools to punish a Gangplank pick here.
And you understand Gangplank's Syndra from a tier list perspective, but I'm actually not a huge fan of the GP. First into Jace, not a great matchup. Could, of course, get worse if they flex the Jace, and then from there, you think, okay, it's not for lane. You can play through bot side. Playing through Garen Yuumi really is a brick wall, so feel like perhaps maybe even something like the Ornn, go a scaling draft, Ornn Orianna, and hope for the best is an avenue Hong Kong Attitude would have taken, but they're going to go to Comfort. We see Lahens, he's always hovering, his famous pick, even though he's support, known for hitting rank 1 and solo queue on the Singed. We're going to jump to the Camille. Let's wait and see the lane assignment here, because usually we'll be Camille mid.
And now that means that it's going to be that much harder to try to play through the mid lane that you were just talking about, Papa Smithy. It feels like Hong Kong Attitude really only have that Syndra Lee Sin combo, but now staring into the eyes of an Elise Camille 2v2 is going to be very hard to overcome.
It's so clear what Griffin want to do. Garen Yuumi eventually hit the mid lane and slowly wave clear, while Jace and Camille find incremental advantages, and Camille has those unique flank angles she can take to get that hard engage, probably on the Syndra more often than not. So let's see if it can be Crash once again on his Lee Sin, finding a way to keep things competitive in the early game.
And my only complaint of Crash's tournament so far is he just seems a little bit disconnected from his laners. He doesn't help them reset their waves as awesome. He's not often shadowing underneath them. He's more so playing for himself, taking advantages and objectives for himself. And I think that's what put Hong Kong Attitude really at the back foot in this tournament.
And while Jankos may have that reputation of yore, we saw him shadowing his top laner and stopping his Kayle from falling hugely far behind in the previous game. So that's the evolution of junglers outside of just the games.
Once more onto Summoner's Rift. We tread third game of the day. Hong Kong Attitude up against Griffin. HKA yet to get a win so far at Worlds group stage. Would be wanting to rectify this, but what a tough opposition they have against them this match.
I'm just checking out the keystones right now and going down the list, noticing that Mission's taking the phase rush. We've seen a couple of different options from Syndras over the course of this tournament. Obviously taking the domination, electrocute if you really want to try to blow people away, but being quite respectful in this this laning phase.
Wants to open up space where possible. Interesting fleet footwork is, of course, going to be Viper just trying to incrementally open up space. Already has the ability to be impervious to slows as well. It's going to be a very swifty Garen once again.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really interesting about the trades that Chovy will take with the fleet footwork, as well as having, what's the defensive one? Secondary tree.
Resolve.
Bone plating. Yeah, Resolve as his secondary keystone there. So probably either trying to dodge out some of these the balls with the speed up from fleet footwork, as well as have the health keep him topped up, and look for small, quick trades by using that wall jump and hopefully getting health back over time and slowly chip Mission out of this lane.
And the gold standard in this ranged versus melee matchup in mid from the Camille side is control wards on both sides of the river, and basically being able to threaten an all-in with hookshot off cooldown. That is absolutely the ultra safety, the high pressure of an Elise that Chovy craves. Not going to be there in the early game, but we've seen Chovy and the LCK take melee versus ranged trades, speaking of trades, Viper takes a bit of damage, and actually win out on lane matchups that on paper seem really, really tricky. Such is his propensity to dominate lane.
And we have talked about kind of where Crash is going to attack, and while we're looking at this bot lane, Crash did start on his bot side jungle, so red into an early Krug clear, which means his Krugs will respawn around the 4 minute. So there's a potential that with this Rakan and Xayah lane, on second spawn of Krugs, that if Crash finds the window, he could try to force the gank here on Viper and Lehend to try to break this brick wall, because when you're against a Garen and Yuumi, you're right. They can just absorb everything, and it's very hard to move them. You have to expend so many resources to force them out of lane.
There are windows when you can attack. W is on cooldown. W is not available in the really early game, but like you say, kind of has to be then, or you're just thinking about top and mid where possible. We mentioned that Tarzan isn't going to be too concerned with the bot lane. He's already top, but will be spotted on a ward if he does trudge forward soon.
That ward is going to expire relatively soon. Maybe timed well by Griffin. Yep, you can see it just goes out, and here goes Tarzan. Waited for the ward to expire, and now 3Z is not in the best of shape. Sword pops the acceleration gate. 3Z's going to try and get away. Tarzan looking for the cocoon, lands it, but there are the oranges. He still sinks in the fans. 3Z will escape for the moment. It took a lot of damage there. Kaiwing jumping onto Viper in the bottom side of the map. Tarzan trading once again. The cocoon lands. Maybe Tarzan's going to go in for this.
Ooh.
Flash away from 3Z, just about escapes.
Yeah, if that had connected, 100% Tarzan was going to flash and try to find the execute right there, but they get what they came for, and they forced the flash off of 3Z. We talked about in Champion Select, it is quite risky picking Gangplank. Yeah, he's considered safe, but some regions don't think so, and that you can punish this Gangplank.
We didn't see the early moments of Crash's entrance to the top side. I assume it was to allow for the push, but ended up being greedy and losing a summoner. Tarzan's back. Needs to show himself topside just in case Lee Sin has gone for an extended camp, and to get his top laner the preferential recall.
Means that Sword can go back and not have to burn his teleport to get back into the lane, which opens up a wealth of opportunities for Griffin as the game does develop.
It also now puts a massive target on 3Z, not having access to his flash or his TP. That means if he does fall and it is a big wave buildup by Sword, it's going to be that much more punishing. So talking about, again, the potential opportunities that either team have, it's the potential bot lane gank for Crash on second rotation of Krugs, and it's the top lane punishment, as you can see that Tarzan's actually looking to slip in underneath here.
And to your point, Medic, we got to teleport straight back to lane by
did.
Sword. You might say, okay, why? You know, why did it go against the caster's expectation? It's because all the camps on the map for the Elise are bot side, so Elise's natural path will be to go down. Instead, looking for a gank anyway, with the lane state starting to push towards Sword.
Repel up from Tarzan, 3Z knocked
Nice.
back. Great little flash in there by Sword, and now 3Z's on the wrong side of this lane. Managing to survive for the moment. Tarzan's ticking down. 3Z
Oh!
first blood in the 2v1. He gets under the tower. 3Z has carried his performance against
Double
G2L.
kill!
He takes them down. You do not fight 3Z in his lane.
And sit down, Griffin, because Hong Kong Attitude are here to play. 3Z, very streaky player, but he is having a hot hand today. You thought for sure that was going to be Griffin's kill.
It's an absolute tilter for the side of Griffin. Not often do they lose the mechanics check, but they definitely do in that particular arena. See from the replay, it just seemed like you say, Frost, that 3Z had accepted his fate. Not at all.
And he burnt so much for that as well. We thought after Sword flash forward, knocked 3Z back onto the wrong side of the lane, it would have been Griffin's kill. Crash now in the middle lane, has been spotted out on a ward as Mission pushes out the lane. But this is a great early start for Hong Kong Attitude. 1,000 gold ahead. Now teleport coming into this bottom lane from Viper.
And it was so important for Hong Kong Attitude to survive that there. Again, if 3Z dies, doesn't have TP, doesn't have flash, that lane would just be over. But now picking up the double kill, has the Sheen, they've got a chance.
Viper's all on his lonesome down towards this bottom side. The Ignite is sticking away. Kaiwing looking for the kill. Viper flashes away, but up towards the Infernal Pit. Chovy's jumping in, kills Crash. Mission just about surviving. Here comes the cannon barrage. Tarzan forced away. Viper coming to join the fray. Chovy still on the Infernal Dragon. HKA might want to fight this. They don't want to give this Dragon up without a fight. Cocoon coming in, lands onto Unified. The Infernal will be secured by Griffin, and Hong Kong Attitude are still getting engaged on the Unleashed Power on Chovy. Isn't enough. Griffin might continue to look for the chase. Prowling Projectile will not connect, and Hong Kong Attitude limp down under their bot lane tower.
Limp is the correct thing to say, but it was all so close in the Genesis there, Viper having to flash out defensively. But Griffin were able to focus on their targets, and their target acquisition got the kill, got the Drake. We finally get that replay of topside after the flash E. You just assumed the Pirate was done for.
Yeah, and it's the health back that really comes in for 3Z there. He not only gets the health back, but he also is able to get out of the cocoon and immediately turn around the damage. Then from there, Griffin just don't have the burst.
And you saw also the minion aggro being so important. There was a hugely grouped minion wave. As we look down the back, everyone seems ecstatic, understandably, about 3Z standing firm. You know, the Gangplank's getting their Trinity Force early. Start looking for a lot of different map plays with the Cannon Barrage, but also potentially some staying power in the lane.
And you can now see it. There's an EXP difference between 3Z and Sword. He's got the Sheen. He's starting to really chunk out. And what was just a hard-won lane for Griffin has now swung dramatically back in Hong Kong Attitude's favor.
Especially when our main concern for Hong Kong Attitude was the top side of the map. Tarzan playing around Sword and Chovy, as we saw him do in the C9 game. Having a start like this is very instrumental for them. However, they are still only 200 gold ahead, and you do have Viper and Lehen scaling up on this bot lane Garen Yuumi combination. You still have Chovy, who's a kill ahead, and farm ahead in the mid lane. Griffin still have all the tools they want. They've just been put back a little bit on the clock.
Exactly. The clock will probably need to read 2 items for Chovy to get the flexible lane assignments they want. Crash being shadowed here by Tarzan.
Good little jump away. Tarzan will clear out the ward that Crash used to safeguard too.
And the big difference there, the fact that Chovy was first to rotate up into the river, meaning that Crash just got the hell out of there. That was a 3v2 situation that Hong Kong Attitude did not want to take.
Notice that Griffin have not been able to set up the sort of river control they would want. They clear out one side. But we see exclusive vision from Hong Kong Attitude on the bot side. Allows Syndra to push up, allows the safety she needs. Tarzan is lingering topside. 3Z so far playing very respectfully.
Still has his flash, has the oranges as well, so if a Cocoon connects, he can escape at least the first bit of CC. Here we go, Cocoon not quite going to find its mark. 3Z won't get the barrel combo, and so he is just back underneath his tower. But look at that, he has a 500 gold lead over anyone in the game. And if you look to where Sword is sitting, he's 1,200 gold ahead.
And I feel like we should be learning something that may actually apply to the future game between Griffin and G2, and that's that these all-in topside players, spot side.
Final chapter used here, the quickness will come out. Kai winged, Damascene Injustice is not enough damage. Viper's still very tanky here. Unified just trying to lock him in place.
But the topside plays twice now have really let down Griffin. You remember the Talia topside, trying to get the Renekton an advantage from Sword. And now, multiple visits from Tarzan, actually accelerating the demise of Sword rather than being trades up.
But I would like to see Hong Kong now spread this advantage over the rest of the map. You have access to 3Z and his ultimate here, and you also have TP on Xayah. And I actually think they're rotating her up for a very early Rift Herald. I was curious if they were going to pull the trigger on teleporting back down bottom and then trying to rush Crash down there. But I think they feel that they've missed their window on Viper and Lehens, and instead Hong Kong Attitude are going for Herald.
And I'm a huge fan of the Herald now because Chovy's cooped up in lane with a whole lot of nothing. Some swords, some blades, but no first completed items. So he's not going to be ferocious in this play. Get there just as it spawns. Chovy's recalling, but no teleport on Chovy.
Viper is on his way towards this as well, though. So Hong Kong Attitude will start it up. As you say, Chovy has just got back to base. Maybe Griffin are looking to delay it for long enough, or maybe they are just accepting the fact they've sacrificed it.
I think they have to accept that it's been sacrificed. The fact that Sword is unable to enter the river and really start laying down poke, he's kind of the #1 guy that you'd look to try to stall this out with Shock Blast. So very well coordinated play from HKA.
Exactly, and it plays around things like 3Z having way more presence in topside than you'd expect in the GP versus Jace matchup. He was the one controlling the entrance to the river, not the Jace like you might imagine. It played around a back and TP timing from the enemy mid laner. Honestly, just a supremely clean play from HKA.
And it can get even cleaner. We have Infernal spawning in 18 seconds. You now have the Rift Herald on side of HKA. They could use the Herald to force pressure and priority over the river with the Infernal.
And that's why you see the TP straight to lane from Unified to push it in again. Get that first access to the river. Keep the control ward alive. Things really coming together. And yeah, absolutely. A Herald charge would mean basically a free Infernal.
And I think the thing with HKA is we have seen them have strong early games. This is looking clean once again, but sometimes it's their mid-game decision-making that falters a little bit, where we see teams like Griffin or G2 taking over the map.
It's variance in individual performers and making sure that their key members get their comfort champions. They don't have the same wide champion pools as, here's the Herald we were talking about. It's going to force Griffin to respond and, again, help HKA get that access over the river to take control of this Herald. So how do Griffin problem solve this? Because it's clear what HKA want.
Well, Viper's trying to stand in front of the Herald for the moment. Tarzan's on his way as well, but 5 members of Hong Kong Attitude are down towards this bottom side. The plates have been chipped away. Chovy behind them now. Blade Caller was just used by Unified. He still has his ultimate if he gets caught out. HKA have pushed in that wave, and now they're looking to gain control over the river. They will not start the Infernal straight away. They haven't actually put a control ward in the pit either, so Griffin still know that that Infernal Dragon hasn't been kicked off.
No sweeper to guarantee exclusive vision around this Infernal, but they will pick up the Scuttle after all. Important note, Rift Herald Summon did not get them the free Infernal, so things do slow out, which for now, Griffin will accept.
It's missing some of that prep work. You talked about the sweeper, denying all of the vision, not also bringing the necessary control wards that HKA needed. And we talked about the variance in individual performance. It's also then the variance in their macro play, which has kind of led to this very up and down from moment to moment performance that you see from this LMS squad.
Currently sitting on about a 9 CS lead in the top lane. Bot lane is a little bit harder to judge. You kind of have to add Vipers and Lehens' farm together. And that means they're slightly ahead of Unified in terms of pure gold value of a bot lane. But Unified's on his way towards an Essence Reaver. You can see Mission almost finished his Luden's Echo in the mid lane. And HKA are starting to get towards those first completed items, and especially having a Trinity Force on the gangplank makes them very powerful right now.
And they just want to draw Griffin into fights where possible, because the 3-lane push with Camille, Jace, against honestly Syndra and any of the side lanes just is so hard to bear. Mission will have to hang back and wave clear. And honestly, the same will be true if Chovy gets a big enough item total. Very hard to match as a GP. So with those things being considered, there is definitely good places to fight and good ways to play for HKA moving forward. Whereas for Griffin, they're waiting for those item completions to give them multiple map play options.
So what is coming up next is we're drawing the battle lines for this Infernal Drake. You can see that everyone's kind of made their very quick backs. They've got their initial itemization. Sword now completing the Ghost Blade on the top side of the map. And everyone's going to be playing rush or defense around this. Tarzan's very quickly clearing out his red side jungle while his bot lane has priority here, and he feels like he has that small window that he can play topside. And Chovy also then cheating down into bot river to just kind of sit on top of the Infernal. They're trying to buy enough time to get everyone back, get these items, because Griffin want to fight for this. They do not want this to go quietly in the night.
But they do need to back for things like control wards. The only one in the inventory just picked up by Elise on the last back. There was a vision advantage in the inventories for HKA, so that's why you had to make those vision missions from the bot side.
But you just have to think how dangerous this is going to be if they don't force out the Gangplank ultimate.
Super dangerous fight from Sword.
What Sword needs to do is get the GP ult, because playing cross map like this, like, he just lost out, but if he can get that ultimate, it makes approaching this Infernal that much safer for Griffin. I think that's exactly what he wanted. He needs GP ultimate to be used not for this fight.
Just he needs to be really careful that he doesn't overextend into the fight and then die because he's trying to look for that GP ult. It's those trades.
Look, he's flanking him.
Affect the other side of the map. Frank coming in with the teleport. Sword looking for the fight in the top lane, but 3Z is able to get out. And you can see what Griffin want to do. They're just not quite able to enact it. And Hong Kong Attitude are now looking for a fight in the bottom lane. Viper able to spin away that courage, the W, reducing the CC duration, meaning he's not locked up for long enough for the CC chain to come out from HKA.
You were talking about the combat puzzle of how to move from here. The TP straight back to top suggests that Sword wants to push down the turret, and they're to some degree seeding the Infernal, but that still requires HKA to pull the trigger. They have a huge cooldown advantage, but right now, they may not have a top lane turret.
It's actually just super fun mind games to watch how this top lane is impacting the rest of the map.
Chovy just able to sidestep the Sonic Wave, and I agree with you there, Frost. It's not often you see the intricacies of the decision-making in such an obvious fashion. And we'll see now. Sword is coming down to join his team. 3Z still has Cannon Barrage, still has Teleport, so he can be in this fight. But because Sword burnt his Teleport to try and get top lane tower,
we're going.
He now can't fight for it.
Oh, Chovy.
On Chovy, he jumps in. The Hexagon Maiden's already been used. Kaiwin going to escape, but here's the TP from 3Z. The Blade Caller will pull them back. Look at the damage on Crash. He's already fallen. That's the jungler, but 3Z's in the fight. The most fed member of HKA looking for some damage, but can't quite find his connections. And now Griffin have control of the Infernal Dragon.
That was actually just very beautiful to watch right there. Not just in the execution of when they finally did pull the trigger and go with Chovy's ultimate, but just kind of the whole events leading up to it. The fact that Sword was really trying to problem solve how he was going to deal with that Gangplank. He then had roam priority after he couldn't find the flank with the TP, shoved the lane in, was first to the rotation, and now pick up the Infernal. Just beautiful, Griffin.
And you see the subtle differences between teleporting straight to top lane and apparently seeding an objective. If it was started straight away, TP disadvantage is clear. Or using that to push in, roam down, and it was actually being involved. You know, for example, he tanks a Scout of the Week. It's not actually a damage involvement, but it's a cooldown that isn't able to be used optimally for the side of HKA. Something's got to give. Lee Sin goes down first, and it's that roam does get Sword and Griffin, the Infernals, top side.
Oh, 3Z was greedy for this. Sword should be able to take him out. 3Z flashes away. Tarzan still on the chase. Tarzan has flash. Doesn't want to go for it because mission has now come up from that mid lane. 3Z just able to survive.
Guys, smurfing.
Is he?
Yeah, he's smurfing.
Now Sword, he's overstayed. Dragon's Rage kick comes out. Sword brings down the ban hammer, but he's the one going to ban prison. Back to the fountain, and Mission will take the first tower of the game.
It's a guy who says he's smurfing, but we get to find out that he's not in this particular case. Goes down. Really nice team play to back up the cavalry there a couple of different ways for HKA. To get the first turret. It should be answered before too long, so we remember just a sliver of health in the top lane. Outer turret from HKA. Bot side, nothing's happening. It's Garen Yumi.
Nothing's happening yet, but with double Infernal and come mid-game, the thing about Yumi in this combination is that she can build more itemization into like pure mage, have things like Deathcap, Luden's Echo, and like Medjay Soulstealer rocking around. She's gonna hit like a truck in about 10 minutes.
But that hasn't necessarily been Lehen's read on the build. He's going back to the build he innovated when the champion was released and much more towards the Athenes. It's extra utility for someone like the Camille and Elise to dive in. So I think it's the fight now approach rather than the inevitable scaling doom that is the full AP Yuumi.
But take your superstar Anchovy and make him an unkillable god when you just stack a cat on her.
I mean, I'm buying what you're selling. It sounds good to me.
Anchovy sitting 1-0-1, almost at that Trinity Force has got a 25 farm lead in the mid lane. He's in a very powerful position, second most gold in the game. 3Z is still the person that Hong Kong Attitude will be looking to carry them through this game with his Trinity Force complete. But the question is, can he hold down Viper, Chovy, and Sword on the side of Griffin?
I actually think it's just really hard for Gangplank to have the same amount of effectiveness against this composition from Griffin. When you think about kind of the late game Gangplank, you think about a rogue barrel that just kind of pops and deletes a team. You know, you got EDG pawn flashbacks before your eyes. But who is his real target here on this comp? You have a lot of range that you're dealing with, and then the melee champions that you can hit are mostly tanks.
There's people you'd like to hit, but people you'll get to, not so much. Griffin trying to defend the mid lane outer.
Accelerated Shock Blast will clear out some of the minions. Tarzan was stunned into the wall, but Griffin now with 2 members can just look for this bot lane turret. They have a 500 gold lead, their first tower of the game. Hong Kong Attitude not giving up the offensive that they have in this mid lane. Teleport coming in from Viper, he'll join his team, but this tower's already almost fallen. They're able to defend it. There's the cannon barrage. Griffin trying to stand tall underneath this mid lane turret, but you can see Unify just chipping away at it. Final chapter coming out. Viper stepping forward. There's the Feather Storm. Shock blast from Sword. He's looking to jump in. The hand's already taken down Unified. A great scatter of the weak will knock them back. But here comes Chovy. Hexa Ultimatum, the shutdown on 3Z, and Griffin stand tall in front of their mid lane tower and do not let HKA take it down.
Because one of the things that Griffin's composition is lacking is the innate wave clear, but something that it has in spades is all of that hard engage, and they're continuing to look for it here.
Mission stuck underneath this turret. Kai Wing and Crash trying to help him out, but Chovy jumps in with a Hextech wall drive, and here comes the damage. Kai Wing taken out with a precision protocol. The unleashed power, not enough damage to kill off the Yuumi. The cat survives, Chovy's alive, and the tower will fall.
Exactly, the brute strength of Griffin to turret dive, even with Sword up top lane basically the entire time. You were just speaking for us, Skurin, about the spacing, how you get access to the members of Griffin. Viper stands tall in the front, you can't get any damage on the backline. The moment that the final chapter started to find its targets, it was lights out for the side of HKA.
And Viper just got Yuumi inside of him, and he's just driving it on HKA. Sets it up perfectly.
He's the to an Orianna, right? He's just a frontliner that's actually opening up the utility from the Yuumi, and then it's lots of mobile melee champions closing the gap and not giving too many cares about the outer turret.
And unfortunately, there's not a lot of way to disengage. As soon as Mission throws out the Scout of the Week and Crash doesn't have Dragon Rage Kick, you're just waiting for all of this constant dive pressure that's continuously charging at Hong Kong Attitude, and they just don't have an answer for all of it.
Griffin just turned to screw this game. They pulled a trigger. It went from being seeming relatively close to a 4,000 difference.
Triple Infernal, are you kidding me?
Everything is coming up Griffin this match. Triple Infernal, of course, will help them out a huge amount. They have a 4,500 gold difference. You can see how quickly it's accelerated off just a couple of plays.
I mean, Triple Infernal alone is that when Jace hits you, if they get it, he's going to blow everyone up. Probably half health this Xayah, and then Chovy just has to land on her.
It's not often that the bot laner is the only person who doesn't use the Infernal particularly well, but Garen is the only exception. There is 4 exceptional users here. We had a Triple Infernal lost from FPX earlier in the tournament. That was more of a mono threat comp. The threats here, they're all over the rift. Viper walks up. The Infernal goes down to Griffin.
And there you see the strongest member of HKA and 3Z right there. We talked about it. When you think of a Fed Gangplank, you think of that massive barrel damage. Well, he got the shot off, he got the barrel on Viper, and he just tickled him.
Not doing much at all. I do like the execution that's calling from Unify to try and reduce some of the healing that Yuumi will be putting out. It feels like it's a long shot for them to be winning fights through that grievous wounds, but perhaps HKA need that to find a way back into one of these fights, because there's another shot blast, Ross. You talked about it. Half of Unify's health just gone in a second.
They just all can walk up. Some comps have no one to walk up. You can have multiple people here, and Garen will always lead the charge. Deep Vision comes down, Baron setup begins. Not the world's fastest Baron, but that's the sort of pressure that will pressure out a mistake from HKA.
And that is kind of the one bright spot, and it just means that Griffin need to be much more creative about how they take the Baron. Again, their ability to turn off of Baron with Elise and with Camille and force you to fight them when you do face check is very strong. But at this point in the game, Griffin are actually playing for Fog of War. It's about that vision denial, creating darkness, and again, forcing HKA to step up into areas that Griffin control.
Right now, Griffin control pretty much everything. They tried to take away the blue buff. Mission was able to pick that one up for himself, but they've got the red now.
Dark map.
Incredibly dark map. Like, all the vision that HK have is in their own jungle, and it's defensive. And Griffin could be doing Baron right now. You have no idea if you're Hong Kong Attitude.
You do know you have a bit more time before you check, because the Baron damage is, of course, on a much lower ebb, so you can just gauge Baron speed or give it a letter grade, in this case like a B-, C+. And you say, okay, you don't need to be 20 seconds early to this Baron. You can definitely give it a longer leash. So they do use the blue trinket after all. They get the confirmation that no Baron start is happening. Griffin will use it for a priority reset, so you still get an advantage as Griffin.
And I do want to point out kind of where Kaiwing is setting this vision. He needs to be careful about getting wards that won't be picked up by the sweepers, so setting things kind of on top of the Raptor camp instead of in that brush that usually has a control ward in it, the one that Tarzan has just walked over, and as well as the Baron Gate ward, the one that's not caught by the pink that's now placed in the pit, but is on the wall just outside it. So HKA trying to hide their vision as one's picked up.
But what I'm taking away from this game, again, it feels like we're still building to the final game of the day, right? G2 versus Griffin, likely to decide first seed. And both Griffin and G2 now, if Griffin can close this game, have been able to do something that I think great teams can do. And it's when you fall behind, you keep it simple. You find a way to make the game about you rather than about the advantages that you've either lost or given over to the enemy. And suddenly, the big GP who was getting flashes out of a Jace 1v1 really hasn't been something for us to discuss. He hasn't been able to find an impact. The map control has almost entirely been ceded, and it's like those moments never happened.
Right now, Griffin just taken the control they've had in some of these team fights and pushed all the way into the HKA jungle. As you say, it's often we see teams fall behind and then flounder to find their way back in the game. If your game plan gets disrupted, you just can't work out the Rubik's Cube. You can't work out the puzzle that you have to solve. Griffin here have shown us just how easily they can solve some of these issues.
But they are trying to figure out how to solve this last Baron one. Papa Smithy keeps talking about how it is going to be a relatively slow Baron, and it also goes back to Lehen's build. You know, we've seen other Garen Yumis that when they have kind of the full AP Yumi, that they themselves are able to kind of shepherd teams away from the Baron. But
definitely being clear here for us, we'd actually use the teleport from Jace to try to force something.
Yeah, but because it's more of this like Super Saiyan Yumi where you stack her on top of someone like Chovy and make him a god, Griffin are actually much more beholden to getting a fight in front of the Baron, creating that fog of war, and again, getting HKA to face check into them.
And my mistake, it was TP from the Garen. Still, all about the Baron. We see some skill shots through the fog of war. We know it started.
Sword was just in the bottom lane. You can see HKA realize they have to check 6,000 HP on the Baron, going down perhaps quicker than HKA thought it would. The teleport coming in now by Sword. Look at Viper. How do you get anywhere near this? The final chapter comes out. Viper's just going to 1v4. Look at the damage coming out from him and Kaiwing, from Lehen's side. They just ripped through them. That's just done. There's nothing you can do at all as Hong Kong Attitude. The Baron falls. Viper and Lehen's shred through you. Sword's there to lend a helping hand. But the Garen and the Yuumi are just demolishing HKA.
Okay, misspoke. Did think that Yuumi would hit that hard, but with triple Infernal and 10k gold, didn't matter.
It was like a 1.5 versus 5 there by the Garen, getting a bit of help by the Catbook, and suddenly the game is just hell in a handbag here for HKA. They've got control of nothing.
They just can't do anything about that. That was actually surprising just how dominant that performance from Viper and Lehen's was. They break through the mid lane inhib. Top lane will be the target next. Chovy, Tarzan, and Sword are like, cool, we just take the Baron. That's all we really needed to do. In mid lane, inhib's down. In top lane, inhibitor tower has fallen. HKA now 11,500 gold behind. And they're looking at it and wondering where on earth this game went.
All the difficult bits of trying to siege down turrets with a Garen have now been just completely thrown to the wayside. They've broken the base in a couple of different spots. Going to be a lovely shopping trip. 006 the Garen after this play. Again, he runs in, and 4 people
are just dead.
That was like some Beyblade action.
Man.
Wow.
Just sitting, spinning in the middle of all of it.
I mean, I've watched Garen with Morello Nomicon in TFT, but I didn't realize they'd moved it over to League of Legends as well.
That was definitely a TFT Garen right there.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so now Griffin with an 11,000 gold lead. You can see Sword did help out with a couple of those accelerated shock blasts, but Lehan's really the main damage source for a lot of that fight. Hong Kong Attitude now coming down towards this bottom side, realizing it's their last outer turret that remains, but Griffin still have a minute 40 seconds on this Baron with which to push on in, and we're yet to even hit the 30-minute mark. 3 completed items on Chovy. Sword has his lethality build well and truly online, and you have a Medjai's on Lehen's. That Death Note currently has 10 pages. I'm sure he'll be looking to add 5 more for all the members of HKA.
It is last call for HKA. They need to dig deep and draw the battle lines here because their base is quickly evaporating.
I'm not sure where they're digging to with their attempts to shovel themselves out of this game, perhaps just hoping that Griffin end it forthwith, because now that bottom lane inhibitor has gone down, top lane will be short to follow, with Baron up, super minions coming in. You have to feel like it's all but turn mission, flashes away. Griffin look towards the Nexus towers, and this should be it.
Looking for the close here. Jace can walk up and nuke turrets with the 3 Infernals. Hard engage.
There we go. Kaiwing trying to jump in, but look at the damage from Chovy on mission on the backline. The Hexagon made him coming out as well. Griffin continues to dive under the Nexus towers, and yet to have one of their players die. Chovy's going to back away. The repel comes up from Tarzan, but what comes up must come down. Tarzan rejoins the fight, spinning to win on the backline. Griffin take the Nexus, and they go to 4-1 in Group A.
And let's be frank, these last 2 games have felt like the appetizer. We're now looking at the main course. You have a G2, very